I chose the topic of teaching hard history to young learners because I really want to know how to do this. I'm drawn to the lower grades, so kindergarten through second, and this course has provided me with enough to know that it really is possible to teach social studies, and for this presentation specifically history, so that it doesn't take away from other core content. I see schools changing so quickly, and I see students being very different than they were a few years ago. They don't know as much how to show tolerance for one another, and how to give teachers and their peers respect. I believe history content, even as young as kindergarten, can provide hope for the future grown-ups that are in our classrooms. So what is hard history? It's the events from the past, things such as slavery, the Holocaust, and wars that are challenging to hear about and comprehend. Hard history can also include controversial subjects that are part of our present but have roots in the past. Those issues include things like gender, race, religion, politics, and even death. These things didn't just become issues this school year. They were issues because of historical factors that happened and led to the controversies that we face today. Why teach hard history? It's interesting to me that when schools were first introduced in America, they were primarily social studies based. The idea was to raise up responsible American citizens, and skills like reading were taught in order for students to be able to read things like the Constitution. So the whole goal of school was to use social studies to teach people how to be Americans. American children still need to know how to be responsible citizens. If you fast forward, you will notice that history isn't prioritized like it once was. Core standards focus now mostly on math and ELA, and social studies can be added often if it's possible to fit it into the other curriculum and if there's time. I think we can see the effects of this in our schools every day. We lose a part of who we are when we don't know where we came from. History opens the door to teach students about the character qualities that responsible, contributing citizens possess, and the earlier it is taught, the better. History teaches us where we came from, how we got to where we are now. It shows us things that we want to change and teaches us who we want to be. So how do we teach these things in school, and specifically to young learners? The C3 framework is a supplement to state standards with the 3 C's standing for college, career, and civic life. It includes curriculum for civics, economics, history, and geography. The goal, of course, is to make social studies a more prominent subject in elementary education and to use these topics to teach children about their place in the world that they live in. Teachers must plan ahead to create meaningful history lessons. They're not just going to happen. A lot of thought has to go into these lessons. Teachers are used to lesson planning. This is nothing new. It's important to think through what the course standards are, how the standards will be taught, and how to assess for understanding. Knowing the students is essential to being able to choose and teach hard topics that will be beneficial to the class as a whole. I think perhaps knowing students is even more critical when we're teaching history and social studies content than it would be to math or ELA standards. This image is created by Judy Pace. She's an author and professor of teacher education at the University of San Francisco, and I feel like it's a good visual reminder of things to consider when teaching controversial issues. She encourages educators to create a supportive environment, to prepare thoroughly, which includes knowing students and having a clearly defined purpose for the lessons. Think through your stance as the teacher beforehand and consider what is and is not appropriate to share concerning your own opinions. To communicate proactively means to plan in advance for good communication between administration, students, and parents. Letting people know ahead of time the whys and hows of teaching a certain topic matter can go a long way to prevent trouble. Select authentic issues that have relevance to the students. When choosing resources and pedagogies, look for diverse materials and views. Guide discussion with sources and tools to encourage inquiry. Allow students to discuss in partners, small groups, or with the class as a whole. Provide guidance without offering answers, and address emotions. We will go into this more in detail in a minute, but it is important to consider the emotional responses students will have to certain material in a history lesson. My mom still talks about the day that I came home from school in tears after reading The Color Purple. I was so disturbed by the concept of slavery that I didn't know what to do with myself. Let's face it, history isn't full of our shining moments. There is hard stuff. There's sad stuff and despicable stuff. As a teacher, it's important to plan for emotional responses to these challenging historical events. When the goal is to help children learn to grow into adults who make the world a better place, it's certainly worth the uncomfortable moments. However, this does require some forethought. In the last slide, I mentioned being proactive with communication. Keeping parents in the loop from the start can go a long way in helping their emotional responses. In an article published in the Education Review in 2019, the authors looked at the requirement to teach the Holocaust to primary grade students in Scotland. They concluded that it is possible to teach such challenging information when parents are made aware ahead of time and kept aware of what is taught and why throughout the unit. In addition to planning for parents, there must be a plan to help students handle their emotions. Anger, sadness, disgust, and fear would be anticipated emotional responses to a history unit on slavery, World War II, a presidential assassination, and so on. Plan ahead for a safe space for students to talk through their feelings. Provide opportunity for students to share their feelings with their classmates, and encourage other students to listen and to understand. Teaching that different people have different perspectives is a chance for them to grow into adults who will also provide the same respect to others. Finally, teachers must also have a support system for themselves. These topics will touch us as well, and navigating our own thoughts and feelings in addition to teaching the students, communicating with parents, and providing a safe space for everyone else can leave us depleted. Having teachers to collaborate with and the support of administration can go a long way. Storytelling is a way to engage the audience and help take them to a different place in time. It is also a strategy for teaching history. Cecily Meyer-Cruz, who is chair of the National Education Association Black Caucus, stated in an NEA publication that classroom lessons involving segregation, lynching, and police violence against Blacks, for example, should be less about shocking students and more about factual storytelling that sparks conversation. And this spark of conversation is the goal. When students start thinking for themselves and forming, asking, and answering questions, they have a chance to become a part of the content they are learning. Children's literature is a useful tool in teaching history. Both historical fiction and nonfiction texts can give students the same opportunity to enter into history and consider what they would do if they were there. Storytelling also provides the chance to help students understand chronology of events. It can be difficult for young learners to understand that all past wasn't very long ago. Following the timeline of stories can help them get their bearings for whether a historical event was recent or very distant history. So how in the world do we get from what students know and what ideas and misconceptions they already have accepted to where we want them to be? It can be a journey, and it is filled with twists and turns of family values, previous experiences, and their own preconceived ideas. Teachers must have a clear vision for where their lesson and unit is headed in order to get there in one piece. We don't tackle hard history topics for kicks and giggles. We do it because we believe that by teaching these things, we can create better people. We can't change what we don't understand, and understanding is not often a straight path, but rather one with many twists and turns. So, keep the goal in mind. A lesson on slavery can lead to discussion on how to treat people of different races in the classroom, in the school, in the community, and the world. When the goal is to create better citizens, we tackle the hard topics with much respect and gentleness. And since we are the role models in the classroom, young learners will often follow our lead. There are pros and cons to teaching history to young learners. The pros include the opportunity to help students find themselves within a social context. Kindergartners especially think about themselves a lot. When we start talking about who they are in relation to others in our classroom, in their school, and in their community, it takes them out of themselves and helps them to think of others as well. Social studies allows teachers to help students think outside themselves and find ways that they contribute even as young as kindergartners. To that end, young learners grow up with the chance to shape themselves into global citizens who can make a difference in the world by how they treat others and what they choose to offer others as they grow. All this provides an opportunity for change that our world and our country is desperately needing. With violence increasing daily, it seems, and people becoming more intolerant as time ticks by, we as teachers have the opportunity to impact change by raising up young people who will be the type of people our world needs. This isn't easy. These historical issues are controversial more often than not, and that can create heightened emotional responses that can be challenging for a classroom teacher to navigate. It's also challenging to keep content age appropriate and can be time consuming to find ways to teach content in a way that students can understand and parents can accept. And subjects that have become increasingly prioritized over the recent years, such as ELA and math, can make it difficult to find time to fit in those social studies elements. There are definitely reasons not to teach history or social studies in general to young learners. However, the impact this education can have on our future generations makes it well worth the effort, in my opinion.